Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace dropping in on you. Hope everybody is having a good day. Hopefully, you've had a productive and prosperous week. Regardless to where you're at right now, if you are still breathing, you're still in the fight. As I always say, I'm coming to you right now with somewhat of a heavy heart. It's been kind of a crazy few weeks for me, but life is going on outside of whatever I may be dealing with. And I've had no short or small number of people who have come to me and thanked me for while going through what I'm going through, still showing up and still doing what I do. It's what I know. I'm not a person who's going to lay down. I'm not a person who's going to roll over. I'm not a person who's going to fold. I'm just not built that way. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to do everything I can to be a positive influence in the lives of people. That's what I do. But for everybody who has shown some love and support and your thank yous that you've sent out, I definitely appreciate it. Um, I'm here, and today my heavy heart isn't, because of something I'm personally going through. It's because of something I deal with consistently every day, indirectly and directly, and that is the mental health crisis in the Black community specifically. Before we move forward, don't forget that the Odyssey Project and Black Men Lead are in the middle of a fundraising campaign, and we are significantly behind, and the work that we do is so important, and you'll get to see in a minute why. And we need your support. So the link to give is in the description box. And for those of you who have this affinity with Cash App, the organization's Cash App handle is also in the description box. Show some love. Um, Early today, I received a notice from a family member in Baton Rouge that a Southern University student had jumped into the Mississippi River. Shortly thereafter, I received a screenshot of the social media post she posted right before doing it. Her name is Arlana Miller. First and foremost, my condolences and sympathies go out to family and friends, to all of the people who probably loved and adored her at school, those who are definitely going to be shaken and even traumatized by the news. Um, this is devastating, and it's devastating on so many different levels. And the reason I'm here is because I don't think that we really see the magnitude or understand the magnitude of what's happening here. For several years, I've been talking to you about this spike, dealing with a young man that I dealt with personally not that long ago, who committed suicide by standing in front of a train. A young man who, in all uh, observances, had a future to look forward to, but couldn't take the pressures of what his family was going through and what he would be leaving behind as he went off to college to pursue a football career as one of the top recruited wide receivers in the country. Um, and I've watched so many more. Being an alumni of U of H, watching one of the greats and the current head track coach at U of H, Leroy Burrell, lose a son uh, last August to suicide. To watch several other high-profile cases of both black men and black women uh, feeling there was nothing they can do, that they had lost all hope, and to understand this complex dynamic of what is perceived as depression that leads to suicidal ideation, that leads to ultimately attempting suicide, and in many cases being successful. Um, what is even more troublesome to me, that on this day is I get cases on my desk every day, and these cases don't care about whether or not I have the resources to handle them. They're coming. and the parents are concerned. I had conversations with several mothers today. They're concerned. I've actually sat down with several of our youth. When I say youth, I mean under 25 today. And this is by far today the most I've been contacted in one day about this crisis. But every day, I mean, literally every day, is something that's coming. And the thing is, sitting up and pretending that it does not exist does not eradicate it or dismiss its reality. Sitting around and thinking it can't happen to you is one of the ways to almost guarantee that at some point it will. We are in a time where there are added pressures that we as children and our children maybe even didn't have to deal with. Social media is an added pressure. Social media is an added pull. Uh, I've shared this with you. We have seen a spike in suicides among Black males between the age of 15 and 24, up 47%, 49% in the last, 6, 7 years. We've seen an immense spike in suicides from children 5 to 11. Blacks now lead that category, age 5 to 11, predominantly young girls. Um, we have seen young, beautiful Black women, several models who were associated with beauty pageants and were winners, uh, commit suicide, jumping from buildings. None of the molds that would normally apply to suicide is applying. The spikes are abnormal. The modes are abnormal. Women aren't normally jumpers. That's things men do, but we're seeing it now. And what that means is we are entering into a space that we're ill prepared to deal with, and we haven't taken it seriously. Uh, we don't have the type of resources. And people say, well, it's the suicide prevention center. So what you have to understand, and I've been saying this for the longest, and I haven't. I'm not the only one that said. Before I started talking about it, Dr. Amos Wilson talked about it, and during that same time, Dr. Naeem Akbar talked about it. But over the past 10 years, it's been primarily me trying to convince people that the African American experience isn't the same as the Euro American or any other experience. It's so unique and it's so different that the Eurocentric idea of psychological approaches to certain situations isn't applicable. We can't view things through the same lens that they view it. And I believe that, unfortunately, the world of psychiatry as we know it in the West has a bunch of challenges. And we need to be aware of all those. I'm not going to get into that right now because that isn't what this is primarily about. This is primarily about a clarion call. I'm sounding an alarm to say, take things serious, be aware of what's going on. Just because someone says they're good doesn't mean they're good. You got an entire space that's needed for Black men because we don't have a space where we can say we're vulnerable. Because we believe the moment that we say we need help, we appear weak. And the one thing we can't be in this community is weak. And so we pretend we're good and suffer in silence. That's a very lethal proposition because suppression simply builds pressure. And eventually pressure explodes. And it can explode inward or it can explode outward. We're looking at the reality of our babies literally being influenced and in many ways intimidated and mishandled and mistreated on social media. And there's an unbridled and unrestricted access to it. And we aren't doing the things that we need to be doing in order to mitigate this crisis. And it is a crisis. It's not a trend, or it's not something that's all of a sudden going to drop. If we don't do something to mitigate it, if we don't do something to intervene, it's going to get worse. It's going to become a new norm. It's going to become a new reality for us. And that's something we don't need on top of everything else we already have to wrestle with. So we need to be on top of research. We need to be on top of making sure we have enough clinical uh, therapists, enough clinical psychologists, uh, in extreme instances, enough psychiatrists. I'm not real big on medicating people, but there are times when emergency situations or extreme situations require extreme measures. But we need to be actively engaging, but also on the flip side of things, we need to create stronger minds, uh, a stronger awareness when you're not sure who you are, when you spend a whole bunch of your lifetime trying to be something someone else said you should be, when you spend a whole bunch of your time trying to measure up to someone else's idea of what is, when you never truly feel comfortable in your skin because it doesn't look the way everyone who seems to be getting ahead or winning looks, and all of this is coming at you, even what appears to be successes to other people appears to be inferior to you. Matter of fact, the clients that I work with that are under 25 that I consider high risk are some of the most exceptional minds and exceptional people I've ever met. These aren't people you would look at and say, man, well, I can see why. These people that you would look at and say, man, you can't see how exceptional you are. You don't see how extraordinary you are. You don't see how phenomenal you are. Well, it depends on what you're measuring yourself against. We need to have an Afrocentric approach to dealing with this issue. We need to have an approach of understanding how we feel, how we think, how we move, our unique experiences, which play into this, how we shape things, our paradigms, and so much more. We need to be aware. We need to have a more engaged and involved community so that people aren't on islands. Now, reading that note that Arlana left behind, it was something that I was going to read it, but I decided no. I was going to read it on here, but I decided no. But it's this level of awareness where she knows that, you know, technically I'm giving up, but I don't want anybody else to give up. So this is what you probably should do. It's too late for me, but this is what I want you to do. And then she's warning people, pay attention to your loved ones because they may say they're good, but and you see it. And by the time I'm reading this, I'm knowing it's already done. It's nothing Rick can go run and do and try to do. It's done. And one of the biggest burdens that I carry in what I do is that one day I won't be good enough. One day, no matter what I do, there's going to be somebody that says, I'm done. And I've been able, I mean, as long as I've done this, it's amazing that it hasn't happened. It just is. I would like to think that I'm really good at reading people. I'm really good at communicating. Um, I thank God. I mean, for what I can't do, finding a way to get through. But that's the biggest weight I carry. And everything that I do for people, the biggest weight is one day I won't be good enough to save a life. I've been blessed. I mean, literally, at least once a week, I get an email. I get a comment in a comment field saying, I've listened to you for years. Back in this date, you saved my life. Um, I actually got to speak with someone today who told me, I've listened to you for so long. If it wasn't for you, I would have quit. That's good. And I'm so grateful, but I'm still worried about the one that I won't be able to reach. And so my goal is to get more people capable of reaching. And they're out there. I'm not like a solo person. I'm Captain Save everybody. But I'm just saying, I see our situation as being unique. It's not, I mean, there's always been, and we didn't have social media, so you didn't hear about it all the time. If it wasn't in your city or your community, you probably didn't hear about it. So That leads it. But I'm talking about the numbers. If you look at the numbers from 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, the numbers we're looking at right now are absolutely off the wall. And we are going to have to be responsible for doing something about that. And so my challenge to you is do what it takes to be aware. Do what it takes to learn more. Be in contact. If you want to learn more, reach out to our organization. If you know someone who's struggling, send them to us. Yes, we are underfunded, but we're not turning anyone away. We're trying to figure this stuff out as it comes, and it's overwhelming. And I think that's scary too, because what happens if somebody doesn't come to us but go somewhere else and they can't get anything? Who's to say they're going to reach out to one more place? What happens if someone refers someone to somewhere and they get nothing? Uh, will they know how to handle it? Because um, as busy as I am, one of the things that happens in the at the Odyssey Project, if there's a suicidal ideation, I don't care who it comes to, it lands on my desk. It does not move through the system without me knowing about it. And it's important because I can't afford to drop the ball. We're talking about somebody's life. We're talking about somebody's daughter. We're talking about somebody's son. We're talking about, who knows, somebody's father, depending on the age. We can't afford to drop the ball, because to me, there are no insignificant lives. I don't look at numbers. Everybody's a person to me. And so I care. And so I'm looking at these things and I'm saying, we have a problem. Now, 16, 17 years ago, I told you we had a problem with intimate partner homicide. I told you we had a problem with incest about 20 years ago. Now we're dealing with the fallout of that. Intimate partner violence and childhood sexual abuse is really what you want to call it, because it's not just incest, it's molestation and rape and everything else from any number of sources. And it's real and it's a problem. And a significant portion of my therapeutic services are going towards women who have suffered those things. I told you about them. And we sort of played off. It can't be that bad. It ain't that bad. That's just a bunch of people complaining. It ain't that bad. It's just an excuse. And we have all these things that we have been trained to say about things, because it takes away our accountability and our responsibility to respond to the need of what's happening in our community. There's this disconnect that we have that keeps us so aloof from what people in the community are going through, that we don't get involved or engaged or wake up until it's at our door. And then we're upset because there's nothing to do with it. There's no one to call. There's no one that you can get in. Why? Because nobody cares until it's them. Oh, yeah. I mean, at a certain level, because the person who sent it to me was literally crying. Didn't know this young lady from Adam, but just heartbroken. And that's the beauty of caring, but that's a burden as well. But for the most part, people are going to look at it and say, "Oh, wow, that's sad." There are going to even be some real mean people and say that was selfish. And the one thing that I've learned being in this profession is that when someone takes their life, on the surface, yeah, it looks selfish. You didn't think about anybody but you. But you're missing the whole part where they don't see any hope. Nobody rationally says there are a lot of options out there, but I'm going to choose this one. When a person says, I'm going to end my life, they have decided there are no other options. And if you haven't been there, you can't comprehend the pain. And so you've got to be careful about that. I mean, I've had some real rough moments. I've had some moments where I'm saying, man, I don't know how much I can take, but I've never thought about taking my life. I've never had a moment where I didn't have hope. But just knowing how it feels to be close to saying, what else can happen? What else can I possibly, that gives me an idea of just how dark it can get for someone. And maybe that's why I've been successful in being able to reach people. Is because I've been close. I've never thought about giving up, but I've been close enough to where I almost just said, hey, if it happens, so whatever. And but there was always something there that said, no, you get your ass up. You can't quit. You're not done yet. Get up. But what if that voice never goes off? Would I've had somebody that could have got me back? That's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be the voice. I'm trying to be the resource. I'm trying to be that last knot in the rope. We have work to do. We have so much work to do in so many different areas. It can definitely be overwhelming. It could be, like, man, what do we start? What do we do? But the thing is, we have to start. Yes, that's the whole thing I'm talking about with the violence in the community and all of that. And we're talking about Black Men Lead. We're talking about, working with the girls and ghettos, restoring ghettos forgotten, and all of the other stuff. And we're talking about music is life, Black community empowerment. All of this stuff is, and then now we're talking about mental health. Let me tell you something. We're in a mental health crisis. And if we don't respond correctly, we're going to see pain in a way we've never seen it before. It's not just going to be worried about them and what they're doing to us. It's going to be seeing us implode and destroy ourselves and take a bunch of people who really love us with us. And the thing is, we need to be proactive right now. We need to be actively engaged. That's what I had to share with you is, I have a family member who is in Baton Rouge who is very, very engaged in another empath. And he and I were talking about it, and, and we're feeling it. And what we have to do is be active. And, when I talked about that burden I carry about one day not being good enough, and what I had to resolve in my head is, am I as good as I can be? So as long as I'm as good as I can be, I've got to be okay with that and hope I'm good enough every time, but be as good as I can be and leave nothing out there to go all in to do everything I can. And so that's my challenge. We've got to wake up. We've got to stand up. We've got to do better. I'm not going to keep you guys any longer, but I'm going to step out of here. And as I do, I'm going to remind you that we are in the midst of a fundraiser. So show your love, support the work we do. The work we do is never ending, and it's coming from so many different directions. And I hope that when I leave this place, I leave the legacy that say I came, I saw, and I gave it everything I had, and people's lives are better because of it. I'm going to ask you to ride with me and be a force and a support in the work we do. On that note, I'm going to also ask that you lift the family of this young lady, the friends, the students that will be traumatized, the people who are shaken. May God be a force in their lives. But this is becoming so common, and I'm dealing with it so much, you know. But I was talking to a friend, and I'm done, I promise. I was talking to a friend earlier, and they said, you know, this is why you show up even after everything you're going through right now. I'm like, yeah, because at the end of the day, there's a lot worse out there. People going through a lot worse than what I'm dealing with right now. It's the worst I can possibly see in my life right now because of my value system. But there are people out there going through some things where they think there's no hope. And so I've got to get up. I've got to get out there. I've got to show up. And so that's my challenge to everybody. It's time for us to show up, show some love. We're out.